So our next speaker is Betsy Meyers, and she is the founding director of Bentley's Center for Women in Business. She's a dynamic speaker, a consultant. She leads workshops around the world on the changing nature of leadership, and she's deeply committed to the center's mission to enable women to become the full leaders that they possibly can. Now, before she got into this interesting field, she's been involved in politics, been a presidential advisor to a couple of presidents on the whole issue of women and women's leadership, as well as having some firsthand experience on her own at the Small Business Administration. She spent some time at the JFK School in a local college here, a place called Harvard. But she's not here today to give us insights into the political campaign, though I'm sure that would be a fascinating topic unto itself. But more importantly, she's here to share a little bit of information about her new book. She's the author of Taking the Lead, Motivating, Inspiring, and Bringing Out the Best in Yourself and Everyone Around You. Betsy, we look forward to your views on what leads to conscious leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Raj. Thank you so much for putting this conference together. What an incredible topic. I just love this when you know where the world is shifting when you have a conference that says building a flourishing business on love and care. And so today I'm going to talk about a little bit about my journey on writing my book, which was kind of very, very interesting, I think, because all my life I've been curious about leadership. And one of the jobs that I found myself in, I was President Clinton's senior advisor on women, and so I had the privilege to work for him in the White House. And I used to watch with fascination our cabinet secretaries. What was it about a Bob Rubin that would walk down the halls of the White House and people would almost bow in respect? And another cabinet secretary wouldn't elicit near the same reaction. But Bob Rubin got the job done. And so what's interesting about my book is when Simon & Schuster bought it, or a lot of authors go to a publisher with their agent, and they have, this is kind of the executive summary, or this is what I'm going to write about. We had this interesting conversation kind of about this topic today, about when does leadership work, and when doesn't it work? And Atria Books, it's just an entity inside Simon & Schuster, they published the book The Secret, Dalai Lama's books. So they are Atria, the books of the heart. And so they said, Betsy, set out to write a book about your thoughts about leadership. So it really was one of those interesting things. There I found myself having 25 years in a career that had been through business, the White House, Harvard, and then I was also Barack Obama's chief operating officer for his campaign in 07, 08, but also a wife and a mom. So what was this topic of leadership? And sometimes that word, leadership, it conjures up all kinds of things in people's heads. But really, what is leadership? And if you step back, leadership is about getting the work done, whatever that is to you, whether it's winning a presidential campaign, whether it's having a successful new initiative at a company, whether it's being a fantastic principal at a school, or raising healthy, happy children. So whatever that is to get the work done. And it does seem that that work, getting that work done, is changing. How we get that work done is changing today. And I always say when I go out and speak, I ask people in the audience to raise their hands if they think they're a leader. So how many of you in this room think you're a leader? And almost every hand, thank God, goes up in this room, right? But you would be surprised. At most places I go to, half of the audience does not raise their hand. So the other takeaway from writing my book was, I say every one of us is a leader. Why? Because at the very least, we're leading our own lives. We decide where we work, how we show up, how we dress, how we deal with conflict, the choices that we make, and then taking responsibility for those choices. When I was at Harvard, I ran the Center for Public Leadership with a guy you might have heard. His name is David Gergen. And both of our mentor in the world is a guy by the name of Warren Bennis. And Warren was the chairman of our board at the Kennedy School Center for Leadership. And Warren said, let's do a survey on leadership. And let's do it every year. And let's take a view of what Americans think about our leaders. And we partnered up with U.S. News and World Report. And since 2006, we've been publishing this take on Americans' views on leaders. And I know you're not going to be surprised to find out that we've been in a 20-year decline in how Americans feel about their leaders across all the industries. Everything from religion, business, politics, press. And what's fascinating about that is we did a conference in 2006, actually to honor Warren Bennis, but it brought together academics, thought leaders, business leaders, political leaders. And there was this unbelievable agreement that the world had changed, and obviously the workforce has changed, more women and people of color and young people, and that what worked in the past, I love Marshall Goldsmith's book, the title of it, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And that's really where we are in leadership. What got us here won't get us there to the next trend. And what came out of that conference, and David and I still talk about it today, which is this unbelievable agreement that, wow, gone is command and control, leadership. And in is a more feminine leadership style that is one of collaboration and listening and bringing people together and not thinking you know everything. And so this was the infrastructure of which I had in my past to set out on my journey to write my book. And as I traveled across the country, and I was one of the only people that had worked for Obama in a senior role in 07, 08 that did not go into the administration. So all of a sudden I started getting all of these invites from corporate America. And so I felt like the last 3 years I've been traveling around having this, not only writing my book, but having this giant focus group with corporate America about the struggles that they are dealing with. And sharing some of my ideas about leadership as I wrote my book. My book had 3 iterations. It just came out last fall. And this is the thing that I took away, which is not surprising to any of you in this audience, which is why you're here today, which is companies struggling with this topic of engagement. And CEOs saying, scratching their heads saying, oh my God, 50 to 70% of my team is disengaged and unhappy. That's what all of the studies are showing, disengaged and unhappy in the workplace. 50 to 70%. So in every audience I speak to, I say to people, wherever you are, unless you're something really special, probably you have 50% of your people not working to their capacity, not happy, and 20% actively disengaged. I know these aren't new numbers, but here's the thing I started to scratch my head on. Wait a minute. We're spending billions of dollars every year on leadership development programs. Are we teaching the right things? And if someone today were to say to me, Betsy, what's the #1 tip you would give a corporation or a political campaign or an academic institution about what they should be teaching? Simply, we need to teach our people to be more conscious of the behaviors they do that cause people around them to be not happy. This isn't, and when I think about my book sometimes I think, wow, I didn't unearth the great secret in Egypt that's been hidden for 2,000 years. Because the interesting thing about it is I traveled around the country. I call it, my friend Rebecca Shambaugh wrote a book called, actually for women, but I say it applies to men too. And the title of the book is so perfect. It's not about the glass ceiling, it's about the sticky floor. And she's basically saying, yeah, you know what, we still have a little bit of a glass ceiling in our world, but at women leaders, what are we doing? What are some of the behaviors we're doing that keep our feet stuck to the floor, right? And men have sticky floor too. And so as I traveled around, I would go to these companies, and I know you can relate to this, where I'd be on the plane and I'd be reading about what the CEO said about engagement or about their company, and I'd be, oh, I can't wait to get there and see how happy these people are. And I would give a talk, and then maybe some of the senior VPs or diversity folks or HR would say, hey, will you stick around for the afternoon and spend some time with us? And then you'd find out, oh, we're not so happy. And examples like this one company where it comes to find out that the CEO brought in a #2 who treated everyone not very well with command and control and fear. And it permeated through the organization. And so but the CEO was blind to what his number two was doing, right? So often we hear these stories. So all these unhappy people below you, and you're unconscious about it. Another story where a very high-tech, you notice I'm not saying the company's names, high-tech company here in Boston decided that they were having some financial issues, and so they were going to just cut their salaries of all their employees by 10% and stop their 401k funding. But guess how they told them? An email. And one of their senior VPs said to me, just happened to be a friend, said, you know what? I'm so disgusted. I'm so unmotivated now to do my job. Unconscious. The Obama campaign, one of our senior leaders 4 years ago, and we had this fantastic office space in Chicago, and there's 10 departments in a campaign. Every department had a glass office, and it could be used for the director's office or a conference room, and all the young people, because the average age of workers in a political campaign are 25, and they were all out in the pit, right? And our deputy campaign manager at the time said, you know what, I don't think that the political team and the field team is really working that well together, so you know what, directors, in the pit with your people. How do you tell them? An email. And in campaigns where there's not a lot of money, and in academia and politics, office space seemingly has a bigger deal, and unconscious. And he said to me, why are they so upset? I don't understand. And I said, it wasn't the idea, it was how you told them, right? And so every one of you in this room could say, let me tell you 5 stories just like that, of unconscious behavior of people that we know. These behaviors do not cause organizations to flourish on love and care. So as I was writing my book, and I kept saying to myself, what am I saying that's different? There's a million leadership books out there. What am I saying that's different? What's my stake on the ground from all my experiences? And here it is. What I'm saying is that leadership, it's a different way to think about it, that leadership creates a feeling. Because we are human beings first and foremost, and what makes us human is our emotions. Our emotions determine our feelings, and our feelings determine whether we engage, disengage, work hard, not work hard. And when people feel valued, feel appreciated, feel supported, clear about their job, they engage and do their best work. So if you wouldn't mind, I just want to do 1 minute exercise with you. If you wouldn't mind closing your eyes, and I want you to think about a time in your life when you were most productive, when you were most proud of the work that you did in your life. And I want you to think about what was going on in your life. Were you not feeling valued, appreciated, included, understood, part of something bigger than yourself? Engaged. All right, open your eyes. Thank you. So for me, when I look back on my career, and I ask myself the same question, when was I most productive? Besides being at Bentley, of course, in my current job, my most productive, happiest time in my life was working for President Bill Clinton. And I ran his office on women's initiatives and outreach. And a great story that I tell about Bill Clinton, and I just want to say that a couple stories I'm going to share with you, I'm not here as a Democratic political strategist trying to get you to vote for Obama or anyone else in 12, that there's stories that I had across my career that I think are relevant and transferable. And so one of the stories I love about Bill Clinton is that a couple years ago when Kim Jong-il, the North Korean leader who recently passed away, said he would only release the 2 journalists if President Obama sent President Bill Clinton. And if you remember, it was August of '09. There he was coming down the stairs of the big plane to pick up these 2 journalists. Not really clear about why he'd been asked to do it, but at the dinner that Kim Jong-il had for President Clinton, the North Korean leader said to the president, "I've always wanted to meet you." And he said, I have such great respect for you. Why? Because in 1994, when Kim Jong-il lost his father, Bill Clinton, then president, wrote a letter of condolence that arrived to the North Korean leader before he'd heard from any of his allies. And by the way, they're not an ally of ours. Who would have thought that a simple act of human decency would have solved an international diplomacy crisis 15 years later? How does that translate to every day? Working for Bill Clinton in the White House, nobody was invisible. President Clinton loved his job, and I asked him once, Mr. President, as every president, every day you open up a newspaper and it's just unbelievable. And I said to him once, how do you handle the bad press? And he said, Betsy, you know what? I love my job on the worst of days. And it was infectious. But that's only part of it. The other part was that he saw his team. He knew what you were doing. He appreciated you. So, as an example, I love this story. We did a big event in the White House. It was very controversial and difficult. And he vetoed a bill. And my job was not to convince him to veto or not veto. My job was only to protect him in the veto with 5 families that had had this experience. I found the families, and he was surrounded by them at the veto, and it went very well, and he was very pleased. And at the end of that event, one of his assistants in the Oval Office came to get me and said, the President would like to see you. So I went into the Oval Office. He was sitting behind his desk. He came out from around his desk. He said, Betsy, you earned your pay this week. And he said, I know how hard you worked on this event and what you went through to do it. There was a little bit of controversy about should there be 1 family or 5 families, and I fought for the 5 families, and he knew that somehow. And he said, he took my hand, and he said, here is a pen for each of the families. You see a president sign a bill or veto a bill, a pen for each letter, and then goes to the people involved. And then he took a 6th pen, and he put it in my hand. He said, this is for you. I'm really proud of you. Now, I turned around, I left the Oval Office with a little spring in my step. And for those kinds of jobs where you work like 80 hours a week, it kept me going for another 6 months. But here's the thing. If the President of the United States, and my story that I just told you is one of hundreds of other White House staff and people who know Bill Clinton over the years, if the President of the United States can take the time to say thank you to his team, so can we. The President of the United States is the busiest person on the planet, and he takes the time to do that. And I think what I have garnered is that we have to get out from behind our desks, get out from in front of our computers. I am absolutely floored. I don't care if I'm at Bentley or the Obama campaign or any company I go to visit. You walk through the halls of that company, and what are people doing? Sitting in front of their computer all day long, every day. And for all the goodness, that good stuff that technology has brought to us, what it has taken from us is the human connection. Every leader that I have interviewed for my book and my work talks about why they're successful. They are successful because and they all call it different things, walk the floor, talk to their people, make time to do it. So I wanted to share another story, because one of the things about Bill Clinton is he survived the darkest days of his presidency, and he left the White House with a reservoir of goodwill because of the way he treated people. So when the chips, everybody loves somebody when they're doing great. It's when people aren't doing as great. So if you take another story that shows a different outcome, and you talk about what happened to Larry Summers when he was president of Harvard. And Larry Summers, I was there at Harvard, and he came in with all the potential, everything, first youngest tenured faculty member, had been Treasury Secretary, famous economist, all of the background to take on this job. And then when he got there, everything he wanted to do for Harvard, great inflation, classes too big, outgrowing space, everything he wanted to do, everyone agreed on, but he couldn't implement. Why? And often people think that was the comment that he made when he talked about women in science. I don't know if you remember. Yes, that maybe that women aren't doing as well in science because they don't have the same innate ability. Not a comment that would ruin a presidency. But what has happened, I always say we all have a reservoir of goodwill in our lives. And what happened with Larry is that by the time he made that comment, his reservoir was low. Because every time, and if you talk to people, and I have great respect for him in so many ways, but the way he treated people in meetings and things, people would say, oh, I was in a meeting and someone had an idea, and they said, Mr. President, we have an idea, or I have an idea, and he would say, that's the dumbest idea I ever heard, right, in front of colleagues and friends. Embarrassing. And so every time we do that kind of behavior, your reservoir of goodwill lowers. So what happened is when he made that comment, his reservoir of goodwill was on minus. And so I have to say to leaders, what is your reservoir? Do you know where it is? Are people going to be there for you when the chips are down? And so it's how we treat people and how we help people be conscious of the behaviors. But it also goes in my work when I ask leaders about why people failed working for them. They 90% of the time they say they weren't really clear what their job was, which is really interesting because there's so much coming at us all the time. How do you help your people get clear about what they should focus on? And one of the reasons I believe that we won the Obama campaign, why President Obama, and if you go back to 2007, he had less than 10% name recognition. He was a black man with a funny name. We went into the campaign without a single endorsement from a governor, senator, or a constituency group. And 2 years later, he became the President of the United States. So no matter how you feel about him or the job he's done, you cannot deny the fact that this guy came from nowhere and became President of the United States. But how did we do it? And what I find fascinating is we were so focused in 2007 on winning Iowa. And I will tell you that everyone in a presidential campaign, there's a million ideas coming at you. People telling you, you should do this, you should do that. Why aren't you doing that? He should go to New York. He should go here. And our campaign manager at the time, David Plouffe, brilliant strategist, an agreement in the campaign, which was, if we win Iowa, we're in the game. We lose Iowa, we're out of the game. So everything we did in 2007 focused on winning Iowa. And David Plouffe must have said 1,000 times, when anything came up, what does that have to do with winning Iowa? Right? And we put all of our resources there. We put $8 million. We put 250 organizers. We opened 50 offices across Iowa. Nobody had ever put more than 12 offices in the history of Iowa. And there's 99 counties in Iowa. Barack Obama visited every single county in 2007. And on January 3rd, 2008, we won Iowa by 9 points. 9 points. And all of a sudden, people said, oh, I guess we should pay attention, all right? And why I tell that story, and I wrote about it in my book, is that so often people don't feel good about the work they're doing that work for you or an organization because they don't really know what their job is. There's so much swirling coming at you and helping your people get clear. Everything I'm talking about is getting people to feel these feelings that their work is valued, they're doing the right thing. And then I just want to close with a story. The company that is my most intriguing company that I've worked with is Southwest Airlines. And I know you all know and have heard about Southwest Airlines, but they are all about love. And to go into their company is you walk down the halls of their company, and there's pictures on the wall. And there's a wall for family photos, a wall for pet photos, sports photos, kids photos. They have a full-time person that does nothing but frame pictures for their community. So you feel like you're in a big living room. And then they have a people department. And the people department tracks their 30,000 employees. But they don't just track them for good things that happen, weddings, babies, exciting things and good work, but they also for sad things, deaths and illnesses and difficulties that people are dealing with. And they find out about it, and they call whoever that is, and they say, how can we help you? And recently there was a story of a gentleman that worked for them whose wife was diagnosed with stage 4 brain cancer. And they called him to say, what can we do to help you? And it was very far along, and there wasn't a lot. The doctor said about 2 years. And he said, well, we've been planning a trip to Italy, but we haven't saved all the money to do it for our 20-year wedding anniversary. And so they took up a collection across the company, and they raised $10,000. And they sent that couple to Italy. And you might sit there and say, wow, that's really a loving thing to do. But here's the thing. In everything I'm talking about, they are the most profitable airline in the country. They, in 2009 and 10, 8, 9, and 10, during the economic downturn, they did not lay off a single employee. Their engagement scores, 97% of Southwest employees say they're engaged and will go the extra mile. So that's what we're talking about here. And so what this word leadership means is getting the work done in a new and different way. And is everybody doing it? No. But when you start to hear about companies like Southwest, campaigns that win that nobody thought they had a chance, things that you see out there that don't make sense when they're surrounded by love and care and treating people well. And this also goes inside the family as well. And I talk about this in my book, because we don't take, we're the same person, so what we do at work, we take home. And I have a little daughter who's 9 now, and since she was really little, I've been asking her, what makes you feel loved? It's an interesting question. And she says the same thing every time, which is time alone with you without the cell phone, right? And so the same thing that we do is asking our employees about the things that make them feel loved and valued and included, because one of the other areas, and we don't have time to talk about it today, but my belief that leaders aren't supposed to have all the answers, but leaders today are the ones that are willing to ask the questions of the people we care about in our lives, and all the answers are right there in our organizations if we're willing to ask. And by being conscious about asking, you will get the answers that will solve the problems. And with that, people say to me, wow, I don't have time to do that. I don't have time to walk the floors. I don't have time to have these conversations. And I say, you don't have time not to do it. At the Obama campaign, one of the things I did, such an easy thing to do, every Wednesday morning, I had breakfast with 10 of my staff, the campaign. And I randomly said, I asked my team, okay, pick one person from each of the 10 departments. And then once a week, we got together, and I asked them 3 questions. 1, why are you here? That's an amazing question. When you ask people on your team, why are you here? And you'll get the most amazing answers. Why I'm here. Oh, I turn my life upside down. Or this is what matters to me about being part of this team. And there's a real connection that happens between the team. 2, what are we doing right here in this organization? And 3, what are we doing wrong? And what needs to change? And that simple exercise, I learned more about what was going on in the campaign and the things that we could fix, some of the things we couldn't fix. But having those simple conversations where people feel valued and feel supported and feel like they matter make all the difference in the world. So this isn't new to all of you. This is why you're here today. But these are the snippets that I've picked up across my career and across my life. And it's the difference between what is effective and not effective. You can get anybody to do anything for a while, right? Command and control, and we all know people who practice it. You can get anybody to do anything for a while, but you won't get their heart. And what we're talking about at this conference, the work that Raj is so passionately, and I admire you so much for what you're doing, and others of you in this room, what we're talking about is getting people's heart. And that is what leadership is about. It's getting people's heart, which then turns into results. So thank you all for your time and listening, and I look forward to meeting many of you at the conference the rest of the day.
Betsy, thank you very much for that.